Hi everyone, today's lesson is on areas. So areas of rectangles, parallelograms, triangles, and rhombuses is what we are going to cover for today. So let's get started. The first is a warm-up. This is a shape. Your job is to find the perimeter and area of the blue shape, which comes straight down here, goes up, down, across. So let's find the perimeter first. In order to find the perimeter, we need to find the lengths of all the sides and add those up. So far we know that's 8, so this is going to be 8. Coming around, we have 8 plus 12 plus 8. This length here, this looks like a right triangle. This is a 6, 8, 10 triplet. Coming down 9, 5. Okay, so I think we can add everything up. We have 10 plus 8, 18 plus 12. So let's see here. We have 12 plus 8 is 20 plus 10 is 30. So we have a 30 units. So what did we do? We did 10, we did 8, we did 12. So that's 30. We have 8 plus 5 plus 3 plus 6. So what is that? We have 9 plus 5 is 14. 14 plus 8 is 22 units. And so it looks like we have 52 units is my perimeter. So that's all the way around, 52 units. To find the area of the blue shape, I am going to need to find, let's see, the area of this rectangle and take away this little triangle right here. So it looks like the area of a rectangle, if you remember, is base times height. And so that would be 12 times 8, which is 96 units squared, because that's units times units. I need to take away this little triangle right here. And so this looks like a 3, 4, 5 triangle. So if you remember, the area of a triangle is going to be 1/2 base times height. So my base, where in a triangle, my base has to be perpendicular to my height. Very important that you remember that. The base and the height are perpendicular, so I'm not going to be using 5 actually. I'm going to be using 4 times 3, so 4 units times 3 units, and then half of that. So half of 12 is 6. So we're going to start off with 96 units minus 6 units squared is going to be 90 units. So the area of this space here is 90 units squared. And I'm going to add this triangle here, which is going to be 1/2 base times height. So 1/2 of 6 times 8. 6 times 8 is 48. So half of that is 24 units squared. So we have 90 plus 24 units squared makes 114 units squared being my area. Okay. So something to remember, if two figures are congruent, then they have the same area. But that doesn't mean that if two figures have the same area, they're not necessarily congruent. So that's very important to remember. Okay. We're going to review some formulas just to make sure you have all the information for those. The area of a rectangle is the base times the height. So the area of a rectangle is equal to the base times the height. In this case, the base is already perpendicular to the height, but that's one of the prerequisites for these formulas, is that the base needs to be perpendicular to the height. The area of a square is also base times height, but because these are the same length, we're going to call them side times side. So the area of a square is just equal to side times side, which is side squared. Again, these are perpendicular, so my base is perpendicular to my height. Very important. Area of a parallelogram. Again, the area of a parallelogram is equal to the base times the height, except for this one, in a parallelogram doesn't necessarily mean that the corners are all right. So we need to distinguish that the base does need to be perpendicular to the height. So you would use this base here and this height here to find the area for this parallelogram. But be careful, because sometimes you're going to get a side. So like, let's say this is 5, that's 6. And let's say that I have a height coming down there, and let's say that's 10. And I want to find the area of this parallelogram. Well, we do know that opposite sides are congruent. So this would be 5. That makes this my base and this my height. So the area of this parallelogram right here on the left is equal to 5 times 10, and that's 50 units squared, because your base is perpendicular to your height. They're going to throw this value in here, and you're not using that, so be careful on that. Area of a triangle, again, also area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 base times height, where the base is perpendicular to the height. So important. I would give you all these links. So let's say that's 3. Let's say that's 10. Let's say this is 12. And let's say this value right here is 9. Which one's my base? Which one's my height? And so I have all these distractors. Well, this would be a distractor, and this is a distractor, because this is my base here, and this is my height here. So the area of my triangle, which is 1/2 my base, which is 12. Keep in mind, this does not go all the way out here. The area of a triangle is only the base of the triangle. So it'd be 1/2 the base times the height, which is 9. And be careful with this. You're only taking half of one of these terms. So half of 12 is 6, and 6 times 9 would be units times units, so 54 units squared. Now the area of a rhombus, remember rhombuses have perpendicular diagonals. That's really very, very important. The formula for the area of a rhombus, okay, where the diagonals are perpendicular, is 1/2 the first diagonal times the second diagonal. And when I say the first diagonal, I mean the entire length of one diagonal times the entire length of the other diagonal. Okay, so let's say this length of this diagonal was 12. So let's say those are 6's and this is 5. This would be 1/2 12 times 10. And remember, half of one of these terms, 6. So that's 6 units times 10 units, which is 60 units squared. And that's the area of this shape. Now, we're going to derive this a little bit just using triangles. So we know the area of a triangle. If I said the area of one triangle in this rhombus is equal to 1/2 my base times my height, my base would be 1/2 diagonal 1. My height would be 1/2 diagonal 2, right? Because you're only taking half of that. The area of one triangle is equal to, let's see, we have a half times a half times a half, which is an eighth, times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Now that's the area of one triangle. That's this triangle that we just found. Well, there's 4 triangles equally congruent, and so really I'm going to take 4 times this shape. So 4 times 1/8 times diagonal 1 times diagonal 2 is going to give me 4/1. 4 divides into 8 twice. So my formula for area of my rhombus, where my diagonals are perpendicular, is equal to 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Okay? Now, this is an isosceles triangle. And in an isosceles triangle, you're going to have 2 sides congruent, which makes the base angles congruent. And if I draw in my altitude, which is perpendicular here, not only does it cut this in half down here, but it is also perpendicular. It says that my sides are 5, 5, and 8, which makes this 4, which actually makes my altitude 3. So find the area of this triangle. The area of the triangle is going to be 1/2 my base times my height. Be very careful. We know our height is 3 units, but my base is not 4. Remember, it's the base of the entire triangle. So that's going to be 1/2 of 8 times 3, 8 units times 3 units. So again, 2 divides into 8 4 times. And so what we have is the area of this triangle given is 4 times 3, which is 12 units squared. Now, we're going to play a game to find the area and perimeter of different shapes. And so in doing this, you're going to, in class, this is sort of it's a challenge. So it's a race between, teams. But we're going to do each of these problems to make sure that you can understand what they are. So find the perimeter of a square. that has a side length of 12. So if I draw a square and I have a square side length of 12, and I'm just looking for a perimeter, I realize that for a square, all sides are congruent. So all sides are 12. And so the perimeter is just 12 times 4, okay, which is 48. Next is a rectangle that has a base length. So we're going to draw in a rectangle. For our rectangle, we have a base of 5 root 3, and we have a height of 2 root 3, and we're trying to find the area. Well, area for a rectangle is base times height, and we already know that the base and the height are perpendicular. So this is going to be 5 root 3 times 2 root 3. Okay, remember, numbers get multiplied with numbers. Roots get multiplied with roots. So we're going to be multiplying 5 times 2, which is 10. And then we have root 3 times root 3, which is square root of 9. Well, the square root of 9 is 3. So 10 times 3 is 30 units squared. So this would be D. Okay. What is the maximum area of a quadrilateral? Now, a quadrilateral is a four-sided shape, and we're going to assume that the sides are not congruent. So I'm going to draw in my quadrilateral. And it says that I have a perimeter length of 20. So let's just practice a few of these. So for example, I could have, with a perimeter of 20, I could have sides 5 and 5. I mean, it could be a square, right? 5 and 5. And so that would be a maximum area of 25 units squared, right? Let's try this again. So let's draw another rectangle and perimeter. So I'm going to say, let's try 8 and 8. So that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. So that maximum area would be 8 times 2, which is 16 units squared. Let's try this again. Another quadrilateral. Let's try 6. 6 here and here. We got a 4 here and 4 here. 6 times 4, we have 24 units squared. I also could try a 9. 9 here, 9 here, 1 here, 1 here. 9 times 1, that's just 9. That's not going to work. So to me, it looks like the maximum area is going to be 25 square units, or units squared. For this problem, it's what is the area of the figure? So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can find the area of this rectangle, and then this little rectangle inside here, which I think I'm going to do. But also, I could have broken this up sideways also. So the area of this rectangle, this looks like it's 3 base times height, which is 3 times 11, which is 33. This one also looks like it's 3 times 11, and because these are equal, so we have 33. If this is 11, this makes, and we took away 4 and 4, that's 8. That would make that inside value 3, okay? And to find the area of this little rectangle here, it would be, find the area of that rectangle, that's going to be 4 times 3, which is 12. And so this is 12 units squared. So what we have is 33 units squared plus 33 units squared plus 12 units squared. And so what is that? That's going to be 878 units squared. So that looks like D. For this one, our job is to find the area of the rectangle. Now again, the area of a rectangle is equal to base times height. So the base, this is my base right here, and my height being here, none of which I got. But I do know that because this is a right triangle, and this is a 30, looks like 60, 90 right triangle, opposite the 90 degrees is equal to 2a, which means a, which is across from my 30, is going to equal to 6. And across from my 60 would be a root 3. So that would mean 6 root 3. Okay, so again, just to reiterate, if you had a right triangle, okay, and across from the 30, you would say A. Across from the 60, we would have a root 3, and across the 90 is 2a. So in order to find the area of my rectangle, it's going to be base times height, where my base and my height are perpendicular. Again, 6 times 6 root 3. Numbers get multiplied with numbers, so 6 times 6 is 36 root 3, and this is units squared. So this would be my answer. For this one right here, you have find the length of a rectangle that's 3 times as long as it is wide. So for this problem here, let's make a rectangle, okay? And we know that it's 3 times, so we don't know how long it is wide. We'll call that x. But I know that it's 3 times as long as it is wide. But we know that the area is 54 centimeters squared. So if the area is 54 centimeters squared, we want to find the perimeter. That's our job here. So we know that the area of a rectangle is equal to base times height, so 3x times x. And the area we already know is 54 centimeters squared. So we can say 54 is equal to 3x squared. Now I'm going to divide by 3, and I'm going to get x squared is equal to 18. And then I'm going to square root both sides. And so the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 18 is the square root of 9 times square root of 2, which is 3 root 2. So that's x. So this side right here is equal to 3 root 2. This side here, and this also is 3 root 2. This side here is 3 times. So 3 times 3 root 2, which is going to be 9 root 2. Because remember, numbers get multiplied with numbers. So 3 gets multiplied by 3. And if that's 9 root 2, opposite a rectangle are equal lengths. So we have to find the perimeter. So all we have to do is add up 3 root 2, 9 root 2, 3 root 2, 9 root 2. So that looks like we have 18 root 2 plus 3 is 6, 6 root 2, and 18 plus 6 is 24 root 2. And so that right here would be my perimeter, and that's units or centimeters. For this problem, the length of a rectangle is x plus 3 units. It says if the area of the rectangle, so let's draw this, okay? It says the length of the rectangle, so we have length is x plus 3. So length, well, I'll just call this the length, x plus 3. We know the area is x squared minus x minus 12. We need to find the height, so we don't know this length here. But we know that in order to find the area of a rectangle, so the area, let me move this up a little bit. The area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. So x plus 3 times length times height, okay? And we know that the area of the rectangle is this length right here. So we know that we have x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to x plus 3 times the height. So we're trying to get the height by itself. So we have height equal to x squared minus x minus 12 all over x plus 3. Now, what I'm going to do is factor, and in factoring this top right here, because this is a quantity and this is a quantity, do not even think of canceling anything here, because you can't do that. This is a whole quantity divided by another quantity. So, but we can factor and then divide once we're multiplying. So we know that that's x times x. In order to make negative 12, I'm going to get a negative 4 times a positive 3. And this is still divided by x plus 3, and that equals my height. X plus 3 as a quantity is going to cancel with x plus 3 as a quantity and make 1. So my height is going to be equal to x minus 4. So that would be B. Okay. Suppose you have 40 meters of fencing to which to make a rectangular pen for a dog. If one side of, okay, so let's draw in our pen. So we have a rectangle here. It says one side of the rectangle is x meters long. So we'll call that x. And write a formula expressing the area of a rectangle. Well, let's see. We know that we have only 40 meters, and one of those is x. So this would have to be 20 and 20, but we would have to take away our x, because if the total meters all the way around is 40, and we added those, see the minus x is going to cancel with the plus x. So we know that that's 20 minus x. So the area of our pen is going to equal length times width. So x times 20 minus x. And so that's going to be, let's see, 20x minus x squared. And so that looks like D. Okay. For this one, we want to find the area of the parallelogram. Again, the area of a parallelogram, okay, is equal to the base times the height, where the base is perpendicular to the height. You can't forget that. So this is my base. My base is going to be 20. So my area of my parallelogram is 20 times my height, but I don't know what my height is. This value right here is my height. But I do know that this is a 45, 45, 90. So that means across from the 90 is equal to x root 2. So if I divide by root 2, I'm going to get one of my lengths of my sides divided by 2, which is 4 root 2, okay? And so what that means is my height being 4 root 2, I'm going to have 20 times 4 root 2, which is going to make 20. Remember, numbers get multiplied with numbers, so that's just going to be 80 root 2. And that's answer D. Find the area of a trapezoid. So the area of a trapezoid, we didn't go over that formula yet, but the area of a trapezoid, okay, is the height divided by 2 times the sum of the bases, okay? And some people would just take the area of a triangle and the area of this triangle here, add the triangle up, and the rectangle up, and that's totally fine. But I still am going to need to find my height, and in order to find my height, I know that this is 6, okay? And if that's 6 here, because it's an isosceles trapezoid, this length here is going to equal this length here. So if this is 6 here, then these are both 3, okay? Oops. That's not good. Oops. Oh, no. Let's see. So what we want to do, okay, is, let me see if I can fix that. There we go. All right. So what we want to do is we want to say this is 3 and this is 3 here, because if that's 6 and the whole length is 12, these are 3, which looks like this now is a triangle that's a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. So to find the area of my trapezoid, okay, I'm going to say the height divided by 2, so 4 divided by 2, times the sum of the bases. So it's going to be 6 plus the whole base, which is 12. So what we have here is 2 times 12 plus 6, which is 18. 18 times 2 is 36, and this is units times units, so that'll be units squared. So 36 units squared. So my answer for this problem is B. Okay. All right, so let's see where we're at. What is the area of an equilateral triangle? Now, an equilateral triangle means that all sides and angles are congruent. So if my perimeter is 18, I'm going to divide that by 3, and each of my lengths are going to be 6. For the area of a triangle, okay, that's going to equal 1/2 my base times my height. So we have 1/2 my base, which is 6 units, okay, but I need to draw in my height. Okay, where's my height, which remember, if it's isosceles or equilateral, your height is going to come down perpendicular and divide this into 2 equal parts. So now I have a 3 here. So I'm going to use, well, also, this is a 30, 60, 90. So 60 here, 30 here. So I know across from my 90 is equal to 2a, which means that a is 3, which we know across from the 30, and across from the 60 is a root 3. So this would be 3 root 3. And so my height is 3 root 3, okay? And so I'm multiplying all these values together right here. Area is 1/2 base times my height. Now, I have a choice of either going 6 times 3, which is 18, and then dividing by 2, which is 9. Or I can say 2 divides into 6 3 times, and then say 3 times 3, which is 9. So either way, I'm going to get 9 root 3 units squared, and that's my area. Oh, here we go. Okay. For this problem, find the area of the figure shown. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to divide this into a rectangle and a triangle. So the area of the rectangle is just base times height, which is 8 times 4, which is 32 units squared. But the top is a triangle, and so this is 4. because this is half of 8. Remember, if this is an isosceles triangle, divides it into 2 parts, and this is going to come straight down perpendicular where this is 4 and that's 4. Okay, which means my height is 3. So my area of this triangle is equal to 1/2 my base, which is 8, times my height, which is 3. Okay, so 1/2 of 8 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So this area in the triangle is 12. We have 32 units squared plus 12 units squared, and that makes 44 units squared. Okay. Okay. Next one is the area of a rhombus is 100. So let's draw a rhombus. So we know that our rhombus looks like this. Okay. And we know that also that my diagonals are perpendicular, like that. So the area of a rhombus, okay, is equal to 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Okay, we know that the area is 100. So we're going to say 100 is equal to 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Now it says find the length of the diagonal if one diagonal, which I don't know what that length is, I'm just going to call it x, is twice as long as the other. And so I guess my other one is going to be 2x. Okay, so it looks like my 2's are going to cancel and divide out, and they're going to make 1 here and here. So it looks like I have x squared is equal to 100. And when I square root both sides, I'm going to get x is equal to 10. And so one of my lengths is going to be 10, and then the other length is going to be double that, which is 20. So that's going to be 10 and 20. A square is inscribed in a circle, and the circle has a radius of 4. So I'm going to put a center in, and you need to be smart about your radius. You don't want to just connect it like that, okay, because that's not really going to be helpful to you. When you make a center here, you want to make your radius so that it goes to a corner like that, okay? Now it says it's a square inscribed, which we know that that's a right triangle, and so when I draw my radius like this, that actually cuts that in half into a 45-degree angle. Instead of 90. Now it says what's the area of the square? So we know that the area of a square is equal to side squared, all right? But we need to find the length of one side. And we know that this radius here is 4. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make this, I'm going to continue this on to make this a diagonal of length 8, okay? And so what that means is we know that that's right also. This means this length is going to be 4 root 2 because this is a 45, 45, 90. So the area of my square is going to be 4 root 2 squared, which is the same thing as saying 4 root 2 times 4 root 2. Again, numbers get multiplied with numbers. So we have 16 times root 2, which is root 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 16 times 2 is 32 units squared, so this answer is D. For this problem, what is the area of a regular hexagon? Now, this hexagon, so let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, we don't know the lengths. We know that it has a perimeter of 12. So if it's regular, then all the sides and angles are congruent. So if we divide this by 6, I know that the length of one of these sides is 2. I'm going to make these into triangles, okay? There is a formula for a hexagon, which we haven't done yet. So I'm going to save that for another day. And so I made all of these triangles. So if these are regular here, that means that this also is equal isosceles here. We're going to go 1/2 base times the height. So we do know that it's a hexagon. The perimeter is 12. I know this length is 2. That makes this length 1. Okay, we know that's 2. And so what we need to do here, these are all 2. So what we need to do here is we need to find the little height here. And so to find the area of one of these triangles, okay, it's going to be 1/2 my base, which is 2, times my height. So in order to find that height, I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem. And I'm going to go 1 squared plus x squared. is equal to 2 squared, and I'm going to get x squared is equal to 4 minus 1, which is 3, and this is going to be the square root of 3. So this value here is the square root of 3. If you haven't noticed yet, and you may have already noticed that, because this is a hexagon and the sum of the angles is 720 degrees, that means each of these angles, an entire angle here, is 120. Okay, which means that one of these is 60 degrees here. So I could have, instead of using a Pythagorean theorem, just use the right triangle, special right triangles, where across from a 30 is a, which is 1, across from the 90 is 2, and across from the 60 is a root 3, so 1 root 3. Anyway, you have options. 1/2 my base, which is 2, times my height, which is root 3. 2's are going to cancel, and so the area of one of these triangles is root 3. But I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triangles, so that'll be 6 times root 3, which is 6 root 3 units squared, which is b. So go ahead, and that's it for today. So you can go ahead and start your work in your textbook, which is problems on area of rhombuses, trapezoids, parallelograms, rectangles, and squares. Thanks for watching.